I invite you. Okay, recording. Yeah, so I invite you to make yourselves comfortable, get into a comfortable position, but not too comfortable. I don't mean lying down. It's good to sit up straight with your back straight as much as possible. But at the same time, let your body relax, let your shoulders relax. And bring your awareness into your body. Take your awareness away from other thoughts, thoughts about the past, or thoughts about the future, or other places. So just let your awareness be right where you are, the present moment, being aware of your body, your breathing, flowing in and out. And let's start the meditation and the session with a positive motivation. So bring into your mind, into your heart, as much kindness, compassion, and concern for others and for the world, as much as you can. Bring those thoughts and feelings into your heart, into your being. To really feel how wonderful it would be if you could help others as much as you can, relieve their suffering, their confusion, their unhappiness, and help them find greater peace of mind and happiness, all the way up to the highest happiness of enlightenment. I really feel how wonderful it would be if you could do that. And we can be of benefit to others, but we need to work on ourselves to be able to do that. We need to free ourselves from our negative, afflictive emotions and thoughts and increase the positive ones. So the more we can do that, the more we can help others. So have the wish to learn something from our class, from doing this meditation and listening to this talk, that you will learn something that will help you to be of greater help to others. So now pay attention to your breathing. Just allow your breathing to flow in and out in a natural rhythm. And with your mind, your awareness, observe each inhalation of the breath and each exhalation of the breath. So keep doing that, one breath after another. So when we try to concentrate our mind, even on something as simple as the breathing, we may find it difficult because of many thoughts coming in. So understand that thoughts are transient, they are impermanent. They come and go in our mind, similar to the way clouds come and go in the sky. And this is true for all of our thoughts and our emotions, even those that are disturbing, negative. They sometimes come up in our mind very strongly, like a huge tidal wave. We may get swept away, carried away by them. But even those kinds of thoughts and emotions are not permanent. They are transitory. They come and go in our mind. And in case you have difficulty believing that, remember some disturbing thoughts or emotions that you had over the past week. Maybe there was some incident that happened and you felt disturbed, unhappy, or even angry, hurt, anxious. So remember that experience. Remember how you thought and how you felt at that time. And now ask yourself if those thoughts and feelings are still there in your mind. Have they been there continuously in your mind since that incident? Or is it the case that they were just there in your mind for a short period of time and then they went away and you had other thoughts and feelings? And you have probably had some moments of feeling very happy, peaceful, free of disturbing thoughts and emotions. For example, when you were with family or friends, people you get along with, you like being with, maybe having a nice conversation, enjoying a meal together, a cup of tea, having warm and loving feelings for each other. So you've probably had some experiences like that in the last week. And at those times, you probably had very nice feelings and not negative thoughts and feelings. So remember a positive experience you've had in the last week, a time when you didn't feel unhappy and disturbed, but you felt happy, peaceful. content, calm. So allow those pleasant thoughts and feelings to come into your mind now. Imagine that positive energy flowing all through your body. Filling every cell, every molecule, every atom of your body. And every part of your mind. Imagine yourself totally filled with those positive thoughts and feelings. So this is the second of a series of talks on the theme of creating peace in a chaotic world. So what we just did is one way that you can experience more peace, even when things around you might be unpeaceful. So there's a book called Buddha's Brain by Rick Hansen, who is a neuropsychologist. So he knows a lot about the brain. And he's also a meditator, practitioner of meditation, and also a teacher of meditation. So in this book, he talks about the brain, but also about meditation and the Buddhist path, but without the usual Buddhist terminology. So it's quite an interesting book. But one of the things he says in there that I found very helpful, he said our brain has a negative bias, meaning just the way that our brains work, they pay more attention to negative information and less attention to positive experiences. And scientists believe that this is because our early ancestors, the, thousands, tens of thousands, 40, many thousands of years ago, early human beings, and they had to be on the lookout. There were a lot of dangers, and they didn't have much in the way of protecting themselves. So they had to be aware of dangers. Maybe there was a lion or a tiger or a poisonous snake or some hostile, another human being who's hostile towards them. And so just to be able to survive, they had to really pay attention to signs of danger, negative things. Whereas when it came to beautiful things like a beautiful flower or butterfly or something, that wasn't so necessary for survival. So they didn't have to pay that much attention to beautiful things. And so this is what scientists believe. I don't know if it's true or not, but they say our brains just evolved that way to pay more attention to negative things or dangerous things and less attention to positive things. Well, when I read that, I felt, yeah, that's my brain. My brain certainly works like that. You know, it's like negative experiences, or, you know, somebody being nasty to you or unfriendly to you, that is so powerful. That kind of experience is really, really powerful, and it really stays in your mind. You keep thinking about it again and again afterwards. Whereas the positive experiences, the nice experiences we have, they just tend to come and go. And in fact, what this author, Rick Hansen, said, he said, when it comes to negative experiences, it's like Velcro. You know, Velcro sticks really well. So negative experiences stick to our brain like Velcro, whereas positive experiences, it's like Teflon. You know, they just slide right off. So when I've talked about this with other people, like when I'm teaching, many people go, yeah, that sounds like me. That's my experience. Maybe some of you can relate to that as well. But anyway, he says that we can change this. We can kind of rewire our brain if we deliberately pay more attention to the positive experiences that we have. Even simple things like, you know, a child smiling and laughing and looking very joyful. Okay, so when we see that child, we feel happy too. We feel joyful too. Or if we see some beautiful flowers or some beautiful scenery, or like I said during the meditation, just being with people we care about and who care about us, and just enjoying each other's company. So these pleasant experiences that we have in our life, don't let them just slide off of you and, you know, disappear. But he said, try to stay with those experiences at least 5 seconds. Yeah, let yourself experience those nice moments for at least 5 seconds. The longer, the better. But don't just go, you know, in and out very quickly. So kind of savor those nice experiences. So he says, if we do that, then, you know, it does help us to change our brain and be able to have more joy, more happiness in our life, and less anxiety and other kinds of negative emotions. So that's why at the end of the meditation, I asked you to, you know, bring to mind some pleasant experience you had over the past week. And then just let that nice experience, that nice energy, just completely fill your body. So I think if you found that helpful, that is another thing you could do on your own. If you do ever find yourself feeling disturbed or unhappy or anxious or unpeaceful, then yeah, just sit quietly, watch your breath for a few moments, bring to mind some pleasant experience or some pleasant thought, and then just stay with that for a few seconds. I mean, it's similar in traditional meditation. For example, in the Tibetan tradition, we're asked to contemplate the preciousness of our human life. You know, how fortunate we are to be human beings and to have all the things that we need to stay alive, and to have time and energy and freedom to be able to learn the Dharma and practice the Dharma. So this is incredibly precious. Not everyone in the world has such a situation. So it's really important that we appreciate the good things that we have and feel gratitude and then, feel, oh, I want to make good use of this life to do what is beneficial for myself and others. So that's one example of bringing into our mind some positive thoughts, positive feelings, to recognize the good in our life and not just focus on the bad and what's missing and what we're not happy with and so on. Okay, so in these talks then, we are looking at how we can have peace, peace of mind mainly, inner peace, even when there's chaos out there in the world, or in our family, or in our workplace. And it doesn't have to be chaos. The word chaos is pretty strong. It could just be some kind of problem, some difficult situation. So when there is chaos or some kind of problem or difficult situation, it's not easy to feel peaceful, but it is possible. We can learn how to do it. So I wonder if you ever find yourself having thoughts like, how can I be peaceful when that person is doing those terrible things, or that person is behaving so horribly, or that group of people are so nasty and uncompassionate, or the people running the country or the people running the company where I'm working, they're so greedy, corrupt, and they're using their position to increase their own profit and their own good and so on. So we look outside of ourselves and we see people or groups doing things that we think are wrong or bad, and it may be true, but we let that awareness come into our mind and then cause our mind to be disturbed and unpeaceful. And we may even think, I can't be peaceful as long as those people are doing all those bad things. They have to stop. For me to be peaceful, they have to stop doing those bad things. So is that a realistic way of thinking? Yeah. If we do think that way, if we think that our peace, our happiness depends on other people and what they do and what they don't do, then that's like letting ourselves be sort of weak, vulnerable, like a very small, skinny tree that's blown here and there in the wind, whichever way the wind blows. The tree gets blown this way and that way, and it might even be pulled out of the ground altogether and blown away. On the other hand, there's some trees like oak trees. I don't know if you have oak trees in Singapore, but anyway, some trees, they have a very, very strong root and trunk, and even very strong wind comes along, but they stand up. They don't get disturbed by the wind. So how would we like to be? Would we like to be like that skinny little tree that can get blown away by the wind? Or would we like to be more like a very strong oak that can continue standing there, even when the wind is very powerful? So we can do it. It is possible to learn how to work with our mind, work with our thoughts and our emotions, so that we can keep our thoughts and emotions positive and even feel peaceful and even feel happy, even if the things outside of ourselves, out there in the world and what other people are doing and so on, even if they are doing things that are wrong and bad and disturbing, we don't have to let our own mind be disturbed by that. So last week I started talking about 4 keys to well-being, which were explained by Dr. Richard Davidson. He's also a scientist, neuroscientist, and a meditator, and a very close friend of the Dalai Lama. So he said he and his colleagues discovered these 4 factors, the factors of the mind and factors of our life, that if we have them, then we will have greater happiness and peace and well-being. And the first of these 4 is resilience. Resilience is the ability to recover, to bounce back after going through some difficult experience, adversity, like losing a loved one or losing a job or being ill or some kind of unfortunate experience that happens in life. So some people have this naturally. They kind of very quickly recover their mental balance and happiness, even after a very difficult situation. On the other hand, some people don't recover quickly, and they can remain in an unhappy state of mind, depressed, worried, anxious, and so forth for a long time. But it is possible for us to work on that and to increase our resilience, develop our resilience. And I mentioned a few methods that we can use when we do face difficulties, difficult circumstances, such as deep breathing. Certain kind of breathing can really help us to stay calm and not get overly upset. Or just breathing normally and doing meditation on the breath. I'm sure all of you have learned that kind of practice. It's very common in Buddhism. Just breathing in a normal way and then focusing your mind on your breathing and keep coming back to the breathing again and again and again. So that kind of practice naturally has a calming effect on our body and on our mind and can help us to not get so caught up in disturbing emotions. But also doing that kind of practice enables us to see our mind more clearly. Yeah, when we're focusing on our breathing and we're calming ourselves down, then we're in a better position to be able to see what is happening in our mind, what kind of thoughts are running through our mind. And when we can see our thoughts, then we'll be in a better position to recognize if there are some thoughts that are, negative, that are unrealistic, exaggerated, and so forth. So unhealthy thoughts, unhelpful thoughts. And that's usually what happens. I mean, when we don't feel peaceful, whenever we are not feeling peaceful, it's usually because of something going on in our mind. Unhealthy, disturbing thoughts are going on in our mind. And sometimes they can be there and we don't even recognize them. And so it's really helpful to be able to look inside and recognize what is going on in my mind, what kind of thoughts are going on in my mind, and be able to differentiate those thoughts that are negative, unhelpful, disturbing, and so forth, as opposed to thoughts that are helpful and positive and constructive. So it takes a while to learn how to do this, but the more we do pay attention to our mind and our thoughts, then the more we will be able to recognize which ones are helpful and which ones are harmful. And then if we do notice thoughts in our mind that are unhelpful, that are harmful, then we don't have to just go along with those. We don't have to stick with those and follow those, but we can change them. Because again, thoughts are impermanent. They are not permanent, fixed parts of our mind. They are like clouds that come and go in our mind. And so even if there's really negative thoughts, disturbing thoughts in our mind, we don't have to say yes to them. We can say no to them. We can say, no, I am not going to listen to you. What you were telling me is not right. What you're telling me is harmful. I'm not going to go with you. And then, Buddhism has lots of different methods about how to think more positively, how to have more positive thoughts in our mind. So yeah, there's this whole kind of body of knowledge, or knowledge isn't the right word, but this whole type of practice called thought transformation, or lojong in Tibetan. Tibetan term is lojong. I'm sure most of you have heard about this. But there, within those teachings on lojong, so many different methods that we can use to think positively and have more positive thoughts in our mind rather than negative, disturbing thoughts in our mind. And I mean, something happened to me today that I can share with this. Really small, something really minor, but we've been having clouds. It's been cloudy here for the last couple of days. And today I looked out my window and I have a beautiful view from my window. I can see for many miles. And there's, a valley and then other hills and mountains. So I was looking out my window at the distance and I could see that over on another hill in the far distance, the sun was shining. The sun was shining on that hill. And my first thought was like jealous. I felt jealous. Oh, whoever's living over there, they have the sun shining. And I'm jealous of them. But then immediately I caught myself thinking that way. And I thought, no, that's not nice. I don't want to think like that. So I immediately changed it. And I thought, I'm really happy that the sun is shining on them. It's wonderful that they get sunshine. And I hope they enjoy it. So, because jealousy is so selfish, it's like, I want that experience. I want that. It's not fair that they have it and I don't. So it's kind of very childish and very selfish. And so when I changed my way of thinking and I thought, I'm really happy for whoever's living over there, people, animals, getting to have the sun shining on them. I'm really happy for them. That's wonderful. And so that's such a positive thought. And I definitely felt really happy. Whereas jealousy, if we let ourselves get caught up in jealousy, it's so painful. It's so unpleasant. And it doesn't do any good. I mean, feeling jealous of that kind of thing, I can't change the weather. I can't change the clouds. And anyway, later in the afternoon, we did have sunshine here. So that's just a very minor example of how, if we watch our mind and we notice some negative thought, negative feeling coming up in our mind, we can just say, no, I don't want to think that way. I don't want to feel that way. That's not good for anybody. I want to change it. And then we bring in some more positive thought or feeling. So in Buddhism, this is something we do ourselves, but it takes a while to learn how to do that. And if you're not at the point where you're able to do that on your own, then you can go and seek help from somebody else, like a teacher. I don't know how busy Geshe Chunyi is, but if he's free, you can talk to him, or you could talk to a monk or nun that you know and that you trust, or some senior student at Amitabha Buddhist Center. So hopefully there's somebody you can go to and talk to about your problem, and tell them what you're experiencing, and then they can give you some help, some advice on how to work with your mind. I mean, this just happened to me recently. I got an email from a student, somebody who's been following one of my online classes, and he sent this email and he said, I have to talk to somebody. It sounded really urgent. He had some really, really bad experience and he was so upset. He said, I have to talk to some teacher. And so I arranged a Zoom meeting with him and we had a conversation, and I'd never met him before. So it was nice to be able to see his face, and I could see he's quite young, probably in his early 20s, and he's relatively new at Buddhism. So he had this bad experience. He was walking to work and some stranger came up to him and spat in his face and spat on his shoes, and then just looked at him with this really hateful expression on his face. And he didn't say anything, and he just walked off. And there were some other friends with him, and they were laughing like, this was funny. And so this young man, he was like probably traumatized to have this experience happen to him. And he continued going to work, and he told his boss about what happened. He works for some office that takes care of mentally ill people, and his boss happened to be a psychologist. And so she was able to listen to him and give him some help and help him to calm down. And she said he's probably a drug addict. The man who spat in his face is probably a drug addict, because there were a lot of drug addicts in that neighborhood, and just by the way he behaved. But he still felt very upset, and he wanted to talk to somebody like a Buddhist teacher to get a Buddhist perspective on what was going on. And so what I realized was that he was angry. He was angry at the man who spat in his face, but then he was unhappy about being angry, because he said, I don't want to be angry at anybody. I don't want to have hatred for anybody. I want to love everybody. And so I said to him, well, that's wonderful. It's wonderful that you do want to have love for everybody and you don't want to be angry. But, we're just human beings, and we're not Buddhas yet. So we do have anger. So it's quite natural. It's quite understandable that you would feel angry at that man. And so you have to just kind of be kind to yourself and accept yourself as you are, and aspire later on to have more patience and not be so angry. And so anyway, we talked for maybe an hour, and I think at the end of the talk, he felt much better. He felt more relaxed and not so upset. So that's just an example of how, if you do have a problem and you're emotionally disturbed, emotionally upset, and you can't manage it on your own, then reach out to somebody who can help you, give you advice. And sometimes just talking through what you're feeling, what you're going through, you yourself might recognize what you need to do, what will be helpful for you to get out of that negative state of mind. So I'm thinking of, there's one verse in the text called the 37 Practices of Bodhisattvas. I think Geshe Chunyi has been teaching that text. It's a really beautiful text. Has he finished yet, or he's still teaching it? Still teaching? Okay. Anyway, it's one of the last verses, verse number 36 out of 37. It says, in brief, whatever you are doing, ask yourself, what's the state of my mind? With constant mindfulness and mental alertness, accomplish others' good. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. So this is talking about a very ideal situation. The ideal situation is that we are always watching our mind, paying attention to our mind with mindfulness and mental alertness. Mental alertness, or it's sometimes called vigilance, that is what enables us to detect if there are negative or disturbing thoughts in our mind, so that we can then take care of them and not let our mind get taken over by them. And then, restore our mind to a positive state so that we can continue helping others and being loving and kind and patient and so forth. So that's how bodhisattvas practice. But if we're not able to practice like that all the time, constantly, like the verse says, well, that's because maybe we're not yet bodhisattvas. We're trying to be bodhisattvas, but we're not yet. So we just have to keep trying, keep working. And as time goes on, the more practice we have, the more experience we have, the more we will be able to recognize, like what happened to me today. I was very quickly able to recognize that that was a negative thought of jealousy, and I could quickly switch it. But I'm not always able to do that. Sometimes it takes me a while to recognize a negative thought and be able to change it. And so, yeah, all we can do is to keep trying, keep working at it, keep practicing, and eventually we'll get to the point where we can more quickly and easily recognize negative, disturbing thoughts in our mind and change them. So I'd like to start talking about the second of the 4 keys to well-being. And this is he calls it outlook, or I think we could also call it perspective, having a positive perspective, a positive way of seeing things. So what he says is, this is the ability to see the positive in others, to see them as human beings who have innate goodness, and the ability to savor positive experiences. So being able to see the good in other people, but also the good in situations, being able to see the positive side of things. And he goes on to say, research shows that simple practices of loving kindness, sorry. So simple practices of loving kindness and compassion can alter this brain circuitry quite quickly. In one study, people who had never meditated before were taught compassion meditation. After just they practiced compassion meditation for 30 minutes a day for 2 weeks. So that means 7 hours of practice. The brain circuits that are important for positive outlook were strengthened. These changes also predicted kind and helpful behavior. So in just 2 weeks, people were able to become more compassionate and have a more positive outlook by doing compassion meditation. So there's a saying about how some people see a glass as half full, other people see the glass as half empty. Have you heard that expression? So in other words, some people are able to see things in a more positive way, whereas other people looking at the same thing will see it in a negative way. So father were good examples of this. My mother was kind of naturally positive and optimistic, always cheerful. My father, on the other hand, was sometimes not so positive. So I remember there was one time I was visiting my parents, and my father was complaining because there was clouds in the sky. And my mother looked out the window and she said, "Oh, but there's some blue sky over there." So it's like, all my father could see was the clouds, whereas my mother could see, there were breaks in the clouds, and she was just very happy. She wasn't bothered by the clouds. So that was just an example of how, looking at the same situation, the same sky, one person sees only the clouds and the other person can see, yeah, but there's also blue sky. So I tend to be more like my father, I have to say. my outlook is usually seeing the negative, but Buddhism has helped me a lot. I have changed a lot through learning Buddhism and practicing Buddhism. So I have learned to see things in a more positive way. So I think that's what he means here by outlook, having the ability to see the positive in people and situations. But I don't think that means we should ignore or deny problems and faults and mistakes and kind of pretend that they're not there. I think we do need to be realistic. We do need to see both the good and the bad. Because, for example, those who are following the Buddhist path, the Bodhisattva path, we do need to be aware of suffering and the causes of suffering, because this is where we are. We and all other sentient beings are in samsara, and it's the nature of samsara to have suffering. There's just lots and lots of suffering and problems. And there's also the causes of suffering, like the negative emotions in our mind and karma and so on. So we need to be aware of those things so that then we have the energy to get ourselves out and to get everybody else out as well. So we do have to be aware of the negative things, but we don't want to only focus on the negative all the time, because then we'll get depressed and pessimistic. So we do need to keep in mind that there's good as well. There's a lot of positive. I mean, everybody, Buddhism says everybody, every person, every living being has Buddha nature, the ability to transform themselves, to get themselves out of suffering and the causes of suffering and get themselves to enlightenment. So there's a lot of positive things in ourselves and in others and in the world. So we do need to keep that in mind, keep that in view. So I think the ideal thing is to have a balanced view, to be aware that, yes, some people have faults and they make mistakes and have delusions. They're not perfect, but at the same time, they do have a lot of good qualities, and they also have the potential, the possibility to change themselves, to transform themselves. So I think with that kind of outlook, that will help us to not have unrealistic expectations of other people and then be disappointed if they don't live up to our expectations. So this is a common experience that happens in human relationships, all kinds of relationships, family and friends and so on. You know, we tend to have expectations of other people. And then if they don't meet our expectations, we can be very upset, even angry, disappointed, hurt, and so on. And then we might lose our compassion and our loving kindness for them and just say, oh, I don't want any more to do with those people. Reject them. So that wouldn't be right. I'd like to read something from a book. This is a nice little book called Awaken Every Day. It's by Thupten Chodron. So it's got 365 Buddhist reflections to invite mindfulness and joy. So this one is number 256. And it's called Disappointment. Although we try to accurately assess people's trustworthiness in different areas of life, sometimes we err and expect too much from them. When they don't act the way we trusted or expected them to act, we feel angry and disappointed, sometimes even betrayed. There's a saying I remember in these situations to calm my mind and return to a more realistic outlook. So the saying is, sentient beings do what sentient beings do. That is, beings in cyclic existence who are under the control of ignorance, attachment, and animosity don't always act in predictable ways. They sometimes lack good judgment or act in ways that sabotage their own well-being. Rather than be shocked by such behavior, I should understand that it happens. If I didn't cling to the unrealistic expectation that this person should be perfect, I wouldn't be so upset when they aren't. I need to accept what is. Yeah, so in Buddhism, there's this idea of samsara, or cyclic existence, which is where we are. We're in samsara. And it's just the nature of samsara that there's suffering and problems. It's a very imperfect situation. It's not Sukhavati, Amitabha's Pure Land or Tushida's Pure Land. I mean, there are these pure lands filled with Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and everything there is very pure and wonderful. But we're not there. We're in samsara. And it's just the nature of samsara that there's suffering and there's problems and there's delusions. We and everybody else have a lot of delusions in our mind. We have ignorance, we have anger, we have jealousy, we have attachment, greed, selfishness. So we have all these delusions in our mind. That's just how it is, because we haven't yet freed ourselves from samsara. We haven't followed the path that the Buddha followed and, get out of samsara. So we're still stuck in samsara. And they sometimes say that samsara is like an ocean, a huge ocean filled with all kinds of scary things, scary creatures and dangers. And so we and all the other sentient beings are like trapped in this ocean. So I sometimes think of, myself and all these other people in this huge ocean, and there's these huge waves crashing over us and pushing us here and there. And we're all just struggling to stay afloat and not drown in this big ocean. So this situation with all these dangers, these are our afflictive emotions, which we don't have any control over. We don't have control over our minds. These afflictive emotions come up in our mind and they just carry our mind away. And most people, most living beings, have no choice or no control over it. And so we have all these delusions, we have our karma, we have all the suffering and the problems that our karma throws at us. And everyone's just doing the best they can in this situation. It's just a really bad situation. And everyone's just trying to stay afloat, trying to survive and not drown. So when I think like that, and, apply that image, that idea to people who are, behaving badly, not behaving perfectly, but behaving badly, then it just enables me to have compassion for them rather than being angry at them. So I hope that makes sense. So that's one thing that can help us just to think about how we are in samsara, and what that means is we just don't have choice or control over our minds and our thoughts and our emotions. So when people disappoint us, or they do things we don't like or we think are wrong, well, just remember, they're just in samsara like us. And they're suffering. Those people are suffering, and they're probably creating even more suffering by the things they're doing. They're going to have more suffering in the future because of how they're behaving. So if we think like that, then it makes more sense to have compassion for them rather than being angry at them. Yeah, so just one last thing. So Richard Davidson, talking about this point of outlook or perspective, said that if we can develop more loving kindness and compassion, then that will help us to have a more positive perspective, more positive outlook. And there are lots of practices in Buddhism to help us have more loving kindness and compassion. And if we can increase those qualities in ourselves, we'll be able to see the good in other people rather than only their faults and their mistakes. And even just to say to ourselves, well, this is just another human being like me. and they just want to be happy and they don't want to suffer, just like me. And if I was in their position, just kind of imagine yourself in their position, in their situation. What would you like? What would you want? What would be helpful to you? Yeah, would it be helpful for people to be critical and judgmental and, nasty to me? Would that be helpful to me if I was that person? Or would it be helpful for people to be kind and compassionate and have empathy for me and try to help me? So that's something you could think about, to contemplate, that might help you deal with this other person. Okay, so I'll stop there and let you ask some questions, although there was one question from last week that Guat Cheng sent me. Someone's posted this question. So the question is, regarding the example I gave last week, I guess they're referring to the trial. I talked about how I reacted to this trial. Anyway, and so the question is, there are many people who will rejoice and agree with the judgment. The judgment was that this young man, even though he killed 2 people, he was said to be not guilty because he acted in self-defense. So some people would agree with that judgment and rejoice. And this happens to many of us in our daily activities, in many similar situations, without us realizing it. What can we do as a Buddhist to reduce such negative actions? So I guess the question is talking about negative rejoicing. And what can we do about that? Yeah, so rejoicing, we do talk about the practice of rejoicing, which is a virtuous practice when we rejoice in things that are virtuous. So if you see somebody or hear about somebody making a donation, a very generous donation to some charity to help other people, so that's a good thing to do. And if we rejoice in what that person is doing, then we create virtue ourselves. So we also create virtue in addition to that person creating virtue. So this is actually a practice to rejoice in the virtues created by others, but also our own. We also need to rejoice in our own virtuous actions. So that's a good thing to do. But on the other hand, if we rejoice in something that's negative or non-virtuous or harmful, then that becomes negative. So if, say, there's 2 countries that are at war with each other, fighting each other, and if one side drops some bombs on the other side, they kill many people, and, feeling happy about that, rejoicing in that, that's negative. You actually create negative karma by doing that. So how to avoid that? Well, we need to learn about karma. We need to study karma so that we understand what is virtuous and what is non-virtuous. So we have to have that knowledge. And we also need to learn about the different mental states, the different kinds of thoughts and emotions, so that we can recognize which are virtuous and which are non-virtuous. So for anger, for example, being angry is something non-virtuous, and having compassion and loving kindness, those are virtuous. So Buddhist teachings explain to us what kinds of thoughts and what kinds of actions are virtuous and which ones are non-virtuous. So we need to learn that and then apply that in our life and really try to only do the things that are virtuous and avoid those that are non-virtuous. And Yeah. So yeah, people do sometimes rejoice in negative actions, and they don't realize that that kind of rejoicing is actually negative, that they are creating negative karma. So we do have to look out for that and be careful about that. But then on the other hand, if it happens, if you do uh, do that kind of thing, you know, rejoice in something negative, and then afterwards you realize, oh, I shouldn't have done that. It's always possible to purify. So whenever we do something negative, it isn't like it's carved in stone and it can't be undone, it can't be changed. So that's not correct. Negative karma, negative things that we do can be purified. There's a whole practice of purification using the 4 opponent powers. So I don't know if I need to explain that. Maybe everyone understands already the 4 opponent powers. But anyway, it is possible. And if you don't know how to do that, you can find out at Amitabha Buddhist Center. They have all the information on how to do purification. Okay, so are there any other questions?
Yeah. If anyone has any question, you can post it in the chat, or you can actually do the raise under the reaction, and we'll prioritize the question. So far, no question yet. But Venerable, just now you mentioned that thing about, you know, being angry. Actually, it's quite interesting because before becoming a Buddhist, right, you're just getting angry. After learning that anger is actually harmful, I think a lot of us end up being angry with our own anger.
Being angry at our own anger?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what happened with this young man that I mentioned. He was angry at the stranger who spit in his face, but then I think he was also upset with himself for being angry, you know, and you know, like, I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to have anger. I don't want to have hatred. So, I mean, it is good to feel that way. It is good to have the wish to not be angry. I mean, I felt that way. I was, you know, when I started learning about Buddhist teachings and I learned about all these negative emotions like anger and attachment and so forth, I had such a strong feeling like, oh yeah, I just want to get rid of all of those negative thoughts. I don't want to have them anymore. But they still kept coming. And I felt, oh, sometimes I would cry, you know, because they were still there, even though I didn't want them there. So I had to learn that, for one thing, it takes time to change the mind. We can't change our mind instantly, immediately. That's simply not possible. And the reason for that is because, according to Buddhism, our mind has been existing for a long time. In fact, it doesn't have a beginning. There's no beginning to our mind. It's always been existing. And as long as our mind has been existing, which is forever, it's had these negative emotions. We've had ignorance, we've had anger, we've had attachment, and on all the others. So they've been in our mind from beginningless time. We've never been free from them. It's never happened that our mind has been completely free of these negative emotions. And so it's like a really strong habit, very, very, very strong habit that we have, and not easy to change that. But it's not impossible. So we shouldn't feel discouraged and hopeless and think, oh, there's nothing I can do about it. We can bring about a change in our mind. And I can see this with myself. I'm not free of anger, but it's much less than it used to be. And I have more patience than I used to have, and other positive qualities. So I can see definitely, if you do apply yourself, you make effort to work on your mind and increase the positive emotions and decrease the negative ones, then it does work. Yeah, but it still does take time. So we need to have patience with ourselves. We need to be kind to ourselves and patient with ourselves, because getting angry at ourselves doesn't help. That's not going to change. That's not going to make you change. So it's only with kindness and compassion towards ourselves that we can change. But we do have to make effort. We do have to apply the, like practice mindfulness, watch our mind, look out for the negative emotions. When we see them, apply the antidotes, work on the antidotes. But the real antidote, the ultimate antidote to all the disturbing emotions is the wisdom realizing emptiness. You've probably heard that before from Geshe-la and other teachers. Yeah, so it's only by realizing emptiness that all the negative emotions can be eliminated from the mind such that they will not arise anymore. And so until that time, they can't be completely eliminated. We can reduce our anger and so forth. But if we really want to eliminate our anger completely so that it's gone forever and it won't come back, we have to realize emptiness. And then it is difficult to understand emptiness, but any little effort we make to try to understand emptiness, listen to teachings, read about it, think about it, discuss with others, that gradually will help us develop an understanding of emptiness and create the causes to one day get the realization. So we just have to accept that it's not something that's going to happen quickly and easily. I mean, the Buddha himself spent many lifetimes working, working on his mind and increasing his positive qualities, his love and compassion and bodhicitta and generosity and developing wisdom. So he spent many lifetimes, and maybe it won't take that long for us. Maybe we'll do it faster, but yeah.
Okay, there's a question here. You mentioned about the 2 points of the Richard Davidson study, resilience and outlook. What are the other 2?
Oh, the other 2. Yeah, I'm going to talk about them later. One of them is attention, which means kind of mindfulness, being aware, having mindfulness of what we are doing. And the last one is generosity, being generous. So yeah, my plan is to talk about those. I can send, I think I have the link for the article. I can send it to you, Guacheng, and maybe you can make it available to everybody. It's just a very short article, but it was a talk that he gave, and then there was an article about it on a website. So I'll try to find that link and send it to you. And I mean, like, Buddhism talks about a lot of different positive emotions, positive states of mind and so forth. that I think the point he was making is because he does research on the brain, and so he and his colleagues were able to find there was an actual correlation with the brain and these particular qualities. I think for some people that gives them more confidence. You know, if we tell people, oh, the Buddhist said it's really good to have loving kindness. It's really good to have compassion. I mean, some people will think, oh yeah, let's do it. I want to do that because the Buddha said so. But some people will think, well, how do I know? How do we know that's true? Who is the Buddha anyway? And so some people are more inclined to believe in science because scientists, you know, they're studying the brain and they can see, oh, if this happens, then it has this result and so on and so forth. So for some people, it may be more convincing if they hear that there's actual scientific evidence that this particular quality, this particular way of being has such and such results. It's good for you.
Any more questions from the participants? If not, actually, I'm very curious. Or maybe I can read the article about it. But yeah, it's, you know, amongst all the qualities, you must have decided to select on some to experiment on, right?
Yeah, he didn't. It's not explained in the article. It's just a very, very short article. So yeah, I don't know why why they chose those particular qualities. But I was looking, there's a book called The Book of Joy, which is about a week-long meeting between the Dalai Lama and Bishop Desmond Tutu from South Africa. So they're really good friends. And I think it was the Dalai Lama's 80th birthday. And Bishop Tutu wanted to be with him. And so he flew to India and they stayed together for a week. And they were having talks about, you know, what kind of qualities are helpful for people to have more joy and health and so forth, and which kind of qualities are not good. And so this book, The Book of Joy, was the result of that. It's written by a writer who happened to be there. He was there at this meeting, and so he kind of recorded their meeting. So anyway, they came up with these, what they called 8 pillars of joy. And the first of those 8 pillars of joy is perspective, meaning, you know, your way of looking at things, your way of thinking about things. So, and then other of those 8 pillars were compassion. I don't remember all of them, but that perspective was one of the things that they came up with as well, that's a very important quality. And I think it is like being, like the Dalai Lama said, in his own experience, he had a lot of difficulties in his life, his country being taken over by communist China, and he had to flee and become a refugee, and then so many terrible things happened to Tibet. But he said, but he's able to see some positive things about this because it enabled him to leave Tibet and come out into India and then travel all over the world. And he's been able to meet a lot of people and learn a lot, like from scientists and so on and so forth. So it's given him many opportunities to increase his own knowledge and his experience and so forth that he may not have had if he'd stayed in Tibet. So that's just an example of, you know, how you can look at a situation and instead of seeing only negative things about it, you can see positive things. So there's a lot of that in Buddhism. Like, for example, the whole idea of the enemy, meaning a person who makes us angry, person who does things that we get angry at and upset about, that this person is actually a great teacher. This person is a precious teacher for us, because this person gives us the opportunity to work on our patience and increase our patience. So normally when someone is nasty to us or gives us a hard time or makes problems for us, we think, oh, this person is terrible. They're awful. There's nothing good about them at all. So Buddhism says, no, that's not true. This person is really helpful for you. Yeah, so we can always see something positive about every situation, especially if our wish is to grow spiritually. If we want to transform ourselves on the spiritual path, we want to have more love and more compassion and more wisdom and more patience. We want to reach enlightenment. So if that is our wish, if that is our goal, then everything that happens to us, every situation we find ourselves in, is an opportunity to learn and to grow. So even bad things like problems that happen to us, they're actually helpful for us. They give us a chance to learn and to grow. Yeah. So I want to recommend another book in case you haven't found it. It's called No Mud, No Lotus by Thich Nhat Hanh. This is a great book. It's very small. You can see it's not a huge, very easy to read. But I love the title. I mean, the title is because, a lotus is a very beautiful flower, but it only grows in mud. It doesn't grow in clean water. It needs dirty, muddy water to grow. But then, so the lotus grows in this muddy water, but then when it comes up and opens up, it's completely pure. It doesn't have any mud on it. So that's an analogy for the enlightened mind. A Buddha is somebody who is in the world. In the beginning, a Buddha is in the world, in the mud of the world of samsara. But then a Buddha will rise above the world and have this completely pure, enlightened mind. And so what he's saying in the book is, if we don't have mud, if we don't have the mud of the world, the problems, the difficulties, the suffering of the world, we won't be able to reach enlightenment. We need to have difficulties. We need to have problems in order to develop our mind, to develop all the qualities we need to reach enlightenment. So he's making that point. And the subtitle of the book is The Art of Transforming Suffering. So he's talking about how to deal with problems, how to deal with suffering. And he says, we should say hello to problems. Hello, instead of go away. I don't want you. Get lost. Yeah. It's really beautiful the way he describes it. So I recommend that if you are having a hard time with any person or any situation, any difficulty. So this book has a lot of methods, a lot of ideas in there on how to use all those kinds of problems and difficulties and transform them into good things. And then there's the book, Lama Zopa Rinpoche's book as well, called Transforming Suffering into Happiness? Like that.
I think so, yes. Remember, now there are 3 more questions coming up. I think once it starts rolling.
We're just about to end. Now the questions are coming.
That's usually the case, which I think is good. I mean, at least there are some questions. So from Cindy, how to draw the line between practicing good judgment and compassion to avoid appearing too soft or being taken advantage by staff or friends?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. And I think it's just a question of trial and error and learning. I used to be very soft myself. Um, I couldn't say no, whenever people asked me to do something, I'd always say yes, feeling I had to say yes. I couldn't say no. But then I would sometimes find myself in situations where I would say yes, but then I'd feel really angry. I felt like somebody's pushing me and I couldn't say no. And then I'd be angry at them and I'd be angry at myself for being so soft. So I had to learn. I had to learn to be more firm and be in touch with myself and be able to know what I can do and what I can't do and what's good and what's not good. So you do have to have a certain amount of wisdom, to be able to know if something is good or not, good for you, good for others, good for the person. So it takes a certain amount of wisdom, skillful wisdom, and also confidence in yourself and assertiveness, being able to speak to express yourself and to say how you feel. And if you don't feel like saying yes, just say, I mean, you can say it in a nice way. You don't have to be nasty about it. You can say something like, well, right now I just have a lot on my plate. I have a lot of work to do, or my health isn't very good, or whatever, whatever your reasons are, just explain that to the person and say, so I'm just not able to say yes. I'm not able to do what you asked me to do, something like that. So it's taken me many years to learn how to do that. And I'm still not so good at it, but yeah, so you can still be kind and compassionate and polite and friendly, but at the same time, firm. And yeah, it's not easy. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I think that's. I think so. Okay, hold on, yeah. Cindy would like to be unmute. Hold on.
Okay. Thank you, Venerable. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hi.
Oh, thanks for answering the question. More specifically is that sometimes we have different groups of friends, and if you don't want to forgo them or reduce your contact with them, but in order to maintain and hopefully give positive influence on them, but like you say, sometimes we are limited by our resources of time and energy. So that could dilemma sometimes a retiree like me face with too many groups of friends. Yeah.
So you're saying it's just really difficult to fulfill everyone's wishes and expectations of you, and yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and also if we want to study the Dharma and practice the Dharma, we have to make sure that we have time to do that. Because if we spend all our time socializing, going out with people, so then there may be not any time left for a Dharma practice. Of course, being with friends can be part of your Dharma practice of kindness and ethical conduct and so forth. But on the other hand, we do need time to study and meditate. So maybe sometimes people might feel unhappy with us because we're not spending as much time with them as we would like to. But we have to find a balance. spend some time with them, but also make sure we have time for ourselves.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Venerable.
Venerable, there's 2 more questions. Maybe we take the third one and leave the 4th one to next time. Yeah. Okay. Third one is from Min. How do we develop breaks? Yeah, as in to stop our mind when we have negative thoughts.
Brakes, like brakes in a car?
Yes, that's right. Brakes in the stop.
Brakes on your mind, stop your mind from going. Oh, well, yeah, I think you do need to have strong mindfulness, awareness of what's going on in your mind, and this recognition of what is helpful and not helpful. So if you do see some negative thoughts coming up in your mind, how to stop that? I think you just need to be very strong and firm with yourself. You just have to have this conviction that if I follow this thought, it will lead to bad results. I will become unhappy. I might do something harmful, create negative karma. So I think you just have to build up that kind of awareness, those kinds of thoughts and awareness, and just be very convinced that that is what you want to do. So when this negative thought comes up, just to be able to say no to it. And do something else with your mind, do something positive with your mind. So I don't know if there's any easy way to do that, but just by more study and more practice. Maybe for some people, it could be helpful to think of your teacher, your spiritual teacher, or to think of the Buddha and ask them to help, like call on them. Please, Buddha, help me. I need your help right now. I'm having a hard time with my mind. Help me to stop this negative thought. So you might try something like that. Or you might experiment with other methods and just come up with some method that will enable you to do it. Okay, so yeah, if there are other questions, you can send them to Guacheng and she will send them to me, and then I can answer them next week. So we'll stop there, and let's just finish by making a dedication of the merit, the positive energy we've created by coming together, having a positive motivation, wanting to benefit as many people and beings as possible, and then spending this time meditating, listening, thinking about, talking about these points. So we definitely created merit, positive energy. So let's mentally share this merit with other beings all over the world, all over the universe. May it bring them peace of mind and happiness. May it relieve their suffering and the causes of suffering. May it be the cause for them to reach full enlightenment, Buddhahood. And also dedicate for the long lives of all our spiritual teachers. May they be with us as long as possible, always in good health, continuing to teach us and guide us with their excellent example. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable. Thank you.
So much.
Thank you, Venerable. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye, Venerable. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Good weekend.